Wondering what you can do to improve your health and fight off a viral infection like COVID-19? You've come to the right place. It's surviving a pandemic. This whole weekend is about helping you live a better life during global outbreaks like we're having now. Up next is Dr. Bruce Webb, who's worked in England, Ireland, and Australia. He's excited about helping you reach your potential in health. So please enjoy this session, and don't forget, like this page, like this video, share it with your friends and family. We need to spread the message that we must improve our health. And don't forget to sign up for that free gift. I'll chat to you after this video.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this continuation of our series. And today it's my privilege to share with you some practical ways that we can use to improve our immune system and improve our immune defense system. This is very exciting, and I'm really encouraged to share these thoughts with you because I tell you, as a Christian doctor, when I look at how the body works, I'm just humbled by the mind of God. First, to start off with, we want to reiterate we're living in the time of coronavirus where everybody's experiencing a lot of stress and threat. And the thing we must emphasize as we look at this topic is that being exposed to a microbe like coronavirus does not equate to necessarily getting sick with the microbe or as a consequence of the microbe. What determines whether we succumb to an infection like coronavirus is the host and microbe interaction. In other words, when we get exposed to a given dose or bolus of an infective agent, the terrain inside our bodies makes a fundamental difference as to whether or not we succumb to illness from that infection and how sick we get. So, as you can appreciate from that picture that's on your screen, if our internal milieu is looking a bit like that rubbish dump, we're not going to be in the best possible situation to fight off or to ward off a threat like viruses. So the environment we create through our choices, and this is key, is the one tool that we always have at our disposal. You and I can't easily change our genes, but through the choices we make, lifestyle choices, we influence the environment in which those genes are expressed. And that touches on the subject of epigenetics, which many of us will know something about. Epigenetics says that purely the environment we express our genes in determines which genes are activated or inactive, and therefore health outcomes to a large degree. So in departing on this talk, I want to emphasize that terrain is key. And so the take-home message of this talk is that which is in your power to control, you must control. And the choices you can make, you must make. So I know Dr. Evelyn's touched on the components of the immune system, but I just want to give a broad overview again. There are a number of components to our immune system. We have the hematopoietic tissue, which is in our bone marrow. This is where the cells of the immune system arise from, like the other cells in our blood and circulatory system. The immune system is divided into two arms. There's the innate arm, which simply means that when we're exposed to a threat, we have inherent defenses that are already in place. Things like natural killer cells, things like mucous membranes, saliva boundaries, all sorts of things that are inherent barriers to that risk. And they form part of what's called the innate immune system. What the innate immune system does is it processes the threat at an entry level and presents it to other components of the immune system, which then allows what we call adaptive immunity to develop. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of that. But so the adaptive immune response is, as the name says, an adaptive response to the threat or infection, in which antibodies and various other cells are produced to more specifically target the threat. So natural killer cells, cytotoxic T cells, T helper cells, B lymphocytes, Kupffer cells in the liver, which are part of the phagocyte system, plasma cells, antibodies, spleen, thymus. These are all components of our immune system, and importantly, barriers. I want to emphasize barriers today as well, but we'll get to that. So that's a nice picture showing the thymus gland. So in terms of how the immune system works, it's really fascinating. Essentially what's happening is when we get exposed to a threat or a microbe or whatever it is from the outside, bacterium, virus, fungus, whatever the threat might be. We have cells that engulf those threats, and the common ones are things like macrophages. They take in that microbe and incorporate it through a process called phagocytosis. And then that cell processes and chops up that threat in that microbe. And actually, that cell becomes what's called an antigen-presenting cell. And once it's processed that microbe into little, usually peptides, which are little protein fragments, it then presents, hence the name antigen-presenting cell, presents that to other components of the immune system. And importantly, when we're small, we have a little gland in the neck that's quite active called the thymus. And in the thymus, the immune cells that our bone marrow is producing as babies are passing through the thymus, and they get educated as to what is our own tissue from what is not our tissue. So when we're exposed to a threat, an external threat, when the immune system is activated, it's constantly comparing what is myself from what is not myself. And most of us will know a little bit about autoimmunity. Autoimmunity is a breakdown in that self-tolerance process, where the immune system has lost the capacity to recognize itself. But a lot of that education about recognizing self happens in that thymus gland. In babies, as I said, it's very active, but in us it becomes vestigial. So most of our thymuses are quite small and atrophic as adults. So first lines of defense. Now the body has a number of first lines of defense. The skin is a big barrier to external threat. Mucous membrane. So wherever there's a point of intersection between the internal environment of the body and the external environment that we're living in, that's a barrier that the body has to limit the risk of infection. So the skin, the mucous membranes of the lung, mucous membrane lining the gastrointestinal tract, mucus itself that the mucous membranes produce, that's a barrier. Cilia, these are little hairs that exist on epithelial surfaces like lining the lung system that help to trap and move out particles. The microbiome, which is the bacteria that sit in and on our bodies, they form part of the defense system. Tears, earwax, stomach acid, and various elimination routes like our kidneys and our liver. Those parts of the liver, like the Kupffer cells already mentioned, they're little cells that sit inside the liver sinusoids, and they actually are part of the phagocyte system. They take out things that don't belong there. So as you can see, there's a number of defense systems the body has in place to look after us. When we get exposed to a virus, this micrograph shows a picture of a virus like coronavirus. And this actually probably is coronavirus by its structure. Coronavirus is like crown. You can see the crown-like structure of the virus. The virus comes into contact with an epithelial surface and binds to certain receptors on that epithelium, like the back of your throat or inside your nose. And the virus binds to those receptors and it incorporates itself. Most viruses have what's called a capsid, and a capsid contains some of the genetic material, and it inserts its genetic material inside your cells. And there inside the cells, those viral proteins or that viral particles, the virus itself incorporates itself sometimes into the nucleus. But in the case of coronavirus, it actually makes contact directly with the ribosomes, which are the protein assembly units inside the cell. And the virus then forces your own cell to make its own proteins, and then they're packaged and exported and leave that cell and infect other cells. So that's how a virus tends to get in. What's amazing is that as part of our innate immune system, we have cells called natural killer cells. And these are fascinating cells. If you want to protect yourself against the risk of viruses, you want to be choosing a lifestyle, both in terms of what you're doing daily, in terms of lifestyle practice like sleep and exercise, and also dietary factors. You want to choose those factors that potentiate and enhance your natural killer cell function. So natural killer cells form part of the innate immune system. In other words, they're cells that are just moving around the body looking for things that don't belong inherently. And then part of the adaptive response, you get cytotoxic T cells, which act very similarly to the natural killer cells, but are more specific. So when a virus has been infected, or a virus infects a healthy cell, you'll see that healthy cell on the left there. The cell uses protein molecules called MHC class 1 molecules, and those molecules are telling that natural killer cell what is you. They're presenting parts of you to that natural killer cell. You'll see there's an activating region and an inhibitory region. When a virus infects a cell, sometimes some of the cell surface molecules are damaged. And that part which normally inhibits the natural killer cell from acting is now gone. And so the natural killer cell recognizes that cell as a threat because it has a virus inside of it, in the absence of those molecules which the damage has taken out. And the natural killer cell then injects things called perforins, which infiltrate the cell, and then they cause the cell to undergo what's called apoptosis. The cell dies and lyses. So that's a fascinating system. These natural killer cells are moving around looking for things that don't belong and cause the cell to die if they find something that's infected by a virus. Cytotoxic T cells are a little different. They're slightly more specialized, but they work in the same way. And this is incredible. When a virus has infected a cell, then the cell puts parts of that virus up. Well, it actually hides them initially. When the cytotoxic T cell comes along, it sends out chemical mediators called cytokines. And those cytokines cause the cell that's infected with virus to push up its surface proteins. And it's basically the cytotoxic T cell is saying, show me what you got. And if it shows that it contains viral proteins or viral particles, that cytotoxic T cell causes that cell to lyse just like the natural killer cell. Fascinating process. And so basically, if you want to keep yourself strong and resistant against viruses, you want to potentiate the action of your natural killer cells, especially in your cytotoxic T cells, because they specifically are very good at recognizing virally infected cells and cancer cells as well. So cancer, these cells can recognize when cancer has changed the surface receptors and molecules on otherwise healthy cells. Fascinating. And then another part of the immune arm is the humoral response, where antibodies are made by B lymphocytes, which differentiate into cells called plasma cells. And the plasma cells produce antibodies to further neutralize threat. Amazing system of defense we've been given. So step one in potentiating our immune system, stop doing what harms the immune response. Now that sounds really obvious, but sometimes you've got to get really back to basics. Let's identify those things that actually impair our immune response. Number one, stop doing them. We'll get to do the things that improve. So number one, stress. Now, none of us are immune to stress. Stress is a part of life. Pathological stress is stress that is protracted and at a certain level that it starts to cause dysfunction in your physiology. And stress is a prime killer of the immune response. So that diagram shows nicely the stress response. The hypothalamus, which is a region in the brain, when you're stressed and afraid, it releases a hormone called corticotropin-releasing hormone, or CRH. That acts on the pituitary gland to release a hormone called ACTH, or adrenocorticotropic hormone, and that in turn acts on your adrenal glands, which are your stress response glands. And they produce cortisol, and they produce a whole lot of adrenal steroid hormones and adrenaline under the influence of ACTH. And one of the hormones they produce is cortisol, like I mentioned. And cortisol controls your diurnal rhythms. So your cortisol is supposed to be high at 8 o'clock and lowest at about 11 o'clock at night. But high levels of cortisol, which happen in the initial phases of severe protracted acute stress, impairs your immune response. It actually suppresses your immunity. So this is step number one. If you want to overcome, or if you want to improve your immune function, step number one, deal with chronic unremitting stress. It severely impacts your immune system, increases your risk of succumbing to an infection, increases your risk of cancers and all sorts of things the longer it goes on. So one of the tissues that's fundamentally affected by stress, looking at, this is a histological section of your small intestine, and you'll see those finger-like projections called villi, and you'll see I've shown a nice little section there. That white big clump area, those darkish clump areas at the base of those finger projections, that's actually part of the lymphatic system. That's part of the immune system. The body puts up the greatest amount of defense around points of threat, points of interface. So wherever we're interacting with the environment, the body has a major immune defense system in place. 60 to 70%, many of you will know, of your immune system lines your gastrointestinal tract. Chronic stress decreases the production of an antibody called secretory IgA, which normally lines those villi. So the immune cells are putting secretory IgA onto the surface of those villi, and they bind certain things that shouldn't be coming into your body, and they take it out. When you have chronic stress, those immune cells are suppressed, and you stop producing the same degree or the same amount of secretory IgA. And as a consequence, your mucosal defense at a gut level is weakened and you become more susceptible. And many of you will have heard of leaky gut syndrome. So stress plays a major role in generating or increasing the permeability of your gut by virtue of decreasing the secretory IgA. Smoking. Smoking has a major impact on the immune system. Nicotine increases your cortisol levels as well, so it increases your stress response, which we've already spoken about. Also decreases your B-cell antibody formation, which produce the antibodies once they become plasma cells. And it also decreases your T-cells' response to foreign antigens. It's also been found that people think these vapor cigarettes or e-cigarettes are safer, but even the vapor from those cigarettes are actually a major free radical stress, and they are being found to damage the lining of the lung system and increasing your susceptibility to succumbing to an infection. Causes airway inflammation, impaired responses to bacteria and viruses. So if you want to help your immune system, stop smoking. Number 3, things that you must stop doing: alcohol abuse. Alcohol has a fundamental effect on the immune system, obviously dose dependent, but reduces your B cell numbers, reduces the plasma cell numbers, which will decrease your antibody production, pushes your immune system to a place where it's probably more hyperreactive, and which increases your likelihood of developing autoimmunity, which is a significant problem these days. Next thing, diet. Those 2 dietary choices. So we all know how easy it is to eat the handful of pizza and burgers. We are naturally inclined to desire those things that are full of sugar, salt, and fat. They stimulate the brain's reward centers the most. And the process we've got to go through is to re-educate our taste buds so that we can start to enjoy the things that are really healthy. But high saturated fat intake has been shown to impair the immune system in excess as well. But we're going to touch more on diet just now. Saturated fats trigger inflammation and cause immune dysregulation. The other thing to look at is to really get your metabolism into control. So we're living in a time where people's metabolisms are broken. People have insulin resistance. In other words, how we respond to carbohydrates and fuel sources inside the body has been negatively affected. Many people are sitting with significant insulin resistance and its cousin, which is leptin resistance. And it's been found that leptin resistance, especially as a consequence of this insulin resistance, is also causing immune dysregulation. So leptin in the right levels tends to control the immune response and modulates it. When people are having leptin resistance, they get impaired immunity. So making sure that we look at the health of our metabolism in terms of how we process and respond to certain food types like carbohydrates is important, and that's a separate topic we can discuss. Very, very important. Sleep has a fundamental effect on your immune system, and we're going to look at that in a separate talk for tomorrow. But acute sleep deprivation has been shown to decrease your adaptive immunity. We spoke about that adaptive immune response, decrease your lymphocyte count, and decrease vaccine antibody responses as well. So sleep deprivation weakens your immune system on a number of levels, and we're going to touch on that a bit tomorrow. Activity. So a lack of activity or inactivity is another factor that really impairs our immune response. It actually tends to increase the amount of inflammation in the body. And it causes immune dysregulation, so amongst many other things, but we'll talk about that as well. So step number 2, what do we need to do to be proactive in enhancing our immune defense system? What are the doables? I love to get down to the doables, not just talk theoretically. What practically can we do? Step number 1, we're going to talk about this in detail tomorrow. Sleep well. Sleep has a fundamental effect on the well-being of your brain and your immune system. Sleep deprivation raises cortisol. People that don't get quality, deep restorative sleep are more likely to get sick after exposure to a virus. So if you're exposed and you haven't been sleeping, you're more likely to fall ill. T cells go down if we are sleep deprived, and pro-inflammatory cytokines go up. The less you sleep, the more inflamed you are. Inflammation is a buzzword of current 21st century medicine. Most of the conditions we're dealing with, or many of them, have some sort of inflammatory component. People are suffering from different kinds of conditions now to what they used to because of the stresses of modern day life and what's happened to our immune defense system. But that's a topic for another day. But inflammation is something we've got to get under control. Our day is only as good as our previous night's sleep, and we're going to go into that in detail tomorrow. Hydration. Hydration has a fundamental effect on the cleansing system of your body. So keeping yourself well hydrated thins secretions, flushes out bacteria, keeps things moving. So that's important, staying well hydrated. Number 3, exercise and movement. So there's a well-known fact in medicine is that stasis kills. So stasis is a slowing down or something becoming sluggish. When your body systems go into stasis or they become sluggish, everything works less efficiently. So to stay alive and feel active and feel energetic, you need to keep things moving. Exercise is very good at keeping the system moving. Many of you will be aware that we have a lymphatic system. So we have the circulatory system, which is the main system of blood vessels and arteries and veins and capillaries. And then adjacent to those vessels throughout the body, we have a thing called the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is largely a passive system in the sense that it collects the stuff that exudes out of the circulatory system. And it drains it back to the heart via a duct in the thorax. And that lymphatic system needs to be supported. It needs to have movement to cause it to flow. So by exercising, one of the things we do is we cause movement back in the lymphatic system. We counteract stasis by exercising. We enhance the elimination routes. We pump more blood through the liver, which cleanses the blood. We pump more blood through the kidneys. We sweat, which removes toxins. So stasis equals slowing down, which makes things tend towards decay. Movement makes things move, which energizes and gives life and detoxifies. Exercise also lowers our cholesterol levels. Our cortisol levels. It also affects your cholesterol levels too, in fact, but that's another lecture. But cortisol, like we've already said, has an immune suppressive effect in excess, and one of the things that cortisol does is it balances out our adrenal stress response and lowers our cortisol levels, which again has immune protective effects. Sunlight. Light is life, and most of us have become so overly concerned about getting skin cancer that some of us don't spend enough time in the sun. The sun has a major sterilizing effect. It has a healing effect. It brings blood flow to the surface of the skin. It produces vitamin D through the action of cholesterol in the skin. They've actually shown, and vitamin D deficiency, I think 70 to 80% of the world's population have been found to be deficient in vitamin D. And vitamin D used to be thought of as just the vitamin associated. In fact, it's a hormone. It acts like a hormone in the body. And it used to be thought of as just the hormone which affects your calcium levels, which it does do. But it has a far wider spectrum of action than just looking after calcium. It lowers your cancer risk. It increases your immunity against viruses and bacteria. It inhibits what's called angiogenesis, which is part of cancer formation. There are vitamin D receptors all over the body, and they're saturated in the brain as well. It affects your mood. It affects so many aspects of our physiology. That's why people that live in sun-deprived places are more at risk of being depressed and down. And we've seen that when we go to the northern hemisphere countries where there's not much sunshine. People seem to sit with not looking very happy with life. And so they've actually found that we used to test people's vitamin D levels, and sometimes we'd get people levels back at levels of 6 and 8. Optimum vitamin D levels are between 50 and 70 nanograms per mole. And there are various recommendations, but at least over 40. And they found that people that have a vitamin D level that's less than 30 nanograms per mole are 10 times more likely to become seriously ill with coronavirus. Now, anything that's 10 times that causes a factor of 10 times difference is very statistically significant. Sometimes in statistics and science, we only see marginal differences, 1.5, 2 times, 3 times, which is not very impressive. A 10 times difference if your vitamin D level is less than 30 nanograms per mole. So get your vitamin D level checked. make sure that your lead level is getting above 30 to 40 nanograms per mole. That's a practical thing we can do. UV radiation can also kill microbes. We know that leaving things out in the sun has a sterilizing effect. So get into the sun. Don't burn. Don't get sun exposure to the point that you cause damage to your skin, but get enough where your skin just starts to pink, but not enough to start to cause damage. Nutrition and immunity. And remember that immune cells are cells. And as cells, they have specific nutrient requirements to function well. So colors in plants, if you want to boost, or boost is the wrong word or the suboptimum word, if you want to potentiate your immune response, there's certain key nutrients that you need in your diet. Think colors, think raw, think fresh, think unprocessed, think lack of sugar. Colors are protective. God has put so many benefits inside the colors of foods and plant foods as a whole. An important concept is that plants use various compounds to protect themselves from external invaders and threats. And things like EGCG, things like curcumin. So there's very active chemicals in plants that they are using as part of their defense system. And when we eat plants, we get the benefit of those defenses, of those defense molecules. So, and that's called xenohormesis. By eating plants, we take on the compounds they are using to protect themselves, and that they confer benefit to us. When the concept of xenohormesis is that when you stress something to just above a certain level, you get that organism to raise its bar to overcome that stressor, and that's what the plants are doing. And by eating the plants, we get the benefit without too much of the stress, which is amazing. So think fresh, think raw, think colors, incorporate those things daily. Vitamin A, carotene, all very important, but we'll look at some of the nutrients now. Fasting and immunity. So fasting has a role, it gives your body time to rest and regenerate. When we fast for long periods of time, or sufficiently in a healthy way, we allow the body to rest and reset. Under controlled conditions, we enter a process called autophagy or autophagy, depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on. And that's where the cells start to clean up their act. They start to look at organelles within inside their cytoplasm that are dysfunctional or old or worn, and they remove those dysfunctional components. So fasting can help to be a short-term intervention, can help enhance the immune response as well, can reset it, like about a 2 or 3 day fast. So that has a role too. Supplements that can help. Important thing to emphasize here is that we don't supplement our way to a healthy immune system. Supplements are an apex intervention. In other words, what I mean by that is our lifestyle changes, our sleep, our stress control, our exercise, our hydration, our sunlight exposure. These are the things that form and our diets. These are the things that form the base for our intervention to improve our immune response, or to give us the best chance of having a strong immune response. Supplements, there are supplements that can be added on top of that to augment the process, but they're always an add-on. They're not the base, so remember that. But there's certain nutrients that have been shown to have immune-promoting effects. Things like copper, folate, iron, zinc. We need to make sure we get adequate levels of those. Vitamin A, like I mentioned, B6, B12. Vitamin C improves lymphocyte function. D, I've already spoken about. Vitamin E, rich in almonds. Carotenoids in the yellow veg, the butternuts, the carrots, squashes. Omega-3s have a membrane stabilizing effect on immune cells, so making sure we get enough omega-3s in our diet. And so these key nutrients, if we're choosing a varied plant-based diet which is rich in colors, fresh and raw, we're going to get a lot of these components naturally. Zinc is really important, as I mentioned as well. I'm just looking at some of the others. So, the doables. These are things now, the take-home messages. Sleep early, deeply, and well. Hydrate with clean water. Get moving. Fast and cleanse. Maximize your nutrition and heal your metabolism. Get into the sun. Stop smoking. Ventilate your home and get fresh air. Control your stress response. Potentiate your elimination routes, like things like your liver and your kidneys and urine production. And the last one I like, laugh and share joy. it's been shown scientifically that laughing and hugging and being a joyful person benefits our immune response. So as a closing thought, I want to encourage you to take these things on board and choose to be a person that adds to the life of others. Choose to be someone that people want to be around, that shares joy and life and healing with those around you. And you will be blessed in the process. Thanks for listening. I hope it was a blessing. Cheers.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce, for that insightful session. Friends, we have to boost our immune systems to stay healthy and fight off COVID-19 and future pandemics. This is the end for today. Tomorrow we'll be back at 9 a.m. sharp, where Rainier, a health presenter who's been on television networks and has his own YouTube channel with his wife Chantal, will be presenting on biblical nutritional principles to fighting COVID-19. I hope to see you tomorrow. Please be ready with pen and paper to take notes. He's going to bring us some insightful information that can change our lives. Now, don't forget to like the page, like the video, share it with friends and family. We're trying to help as many people as possible. And then also, we still have that free gift for you. We have content, exclusive content that we've made available. All you have to do, go to the description, hit the link, sign up. It takes 5 seconds and that information will be yours. Don't lose out on that. I will see you tomorrow. Don't forget, 9 a.m. sharp, right back here. Enjoy, and I look forward to chatting to you again.